two of former President Trump's closest allies involved now in two major federal investigations. And this morning, news on both. In a letter obtained by the Daily Beast, Joel Greenberg, a central figure in the ongoing investigation into Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, writes that Gaetz paid for sex with multiple women. Note this, including with a minor who was 17 years old at the time. We should note that CNN has not seen the letter, cannot verify those details. A spokesperson for Gaetz is denying those allegations, and Joel Greenberg's attorney has declined to comment. But all of this sure to fuel fresh questions for Gaetz. He is at the center of a known Justice Department investigation over allegations involving both sex trafficking and prostitution. We will have much more on that in a moment, but there is also this news. Rudy Giuliani speaking out. He is denying wrongdoing after federal agents executed search warrants on his Manhattan residence and office. This, as the Washington Post has learned, that the FBI directly warned Giuliani that he was the target of a Russian influence operation, disinformation. CNN's Paula Reed is following the latest on Congressman Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg. So, Paula, walk us through what this letter purports to show.
Good morning. Well, Joel Greenberg wrote a letter admitting that he and Gaetz paid for sex with multiple women, including a minor who was just 17 at the time. And the letter was drafted after Greenberg asked Roger Stone, a close ally and friend of former President Trump, for help in obtaining a pardon during the final months of the Trump administration. Now, in an earlier draft of this letter obtained by the Daily Beast, Greenberg claims that he and Gaetz thought one woman was 19 years old, but later learned she was actually underage. Greenberg reportedly claims that when he learned of this, he immediately called the congressman and warned him to steer clear. Now, CNN has not seen the letter and can't verify the details, but we have spoken to several women who were involved with these men, and we have reported Greenberg paid women on behalf of Gaetz after some sexual encounters. Now, CNN's own Chris Cuomo spoke to Roger Stone last night. Stone says he doesn't recall any letter. He says that he never heard Greenberg implicating Gaetz and that he never tried to get Greenberg a pardon. And Stone told the Daily Beast he never asked nor received any money from Greenberg.
All right, tell us about Gaetz' response to this.
Well, spokesman for Gaetz responded with a statement saying, in part, Congressman Gaetz has never paid for sex, nor has he had sex with a 17-year-old as an adult. The story goes some way to showing how Representative Gaetz was long out of touch with Mr. Greenberg and had no interest in involving himself in Mr. Greenberg's affairs. But Mr. Greenberg is very much involved in Mr. Gaetz' affairs. Greenberg is currently in jail. He's facing 33 federal charges, including sex trafficking. And sources tell CNN Greenberg has been cooperating with federal investigators since last year, and he has shared information with them about encounters he and the congressman had with women who were given cash or gifts in exchange for sex. And Mr. Greenberg is expected to finalize his plea deal in the coming weeks.
We now have this Daily Beast reporting about this letter in which Joel Greenberg, who we know is cooperating with the federal investigators, in effect documents to sort of back up his cooperation with investigators that Gaetz, or alleges, paid for sex with multiple women, including a minor who was 17 at the time. How troublesome is that development, if it proves to be true, for Gaetz?
You know, this all kind of falls into the category with Giuliani, too, of if you're under criminal investigation, certainly if you're facing criminal charges, as Joel Greenberg was at that time, do not speak, do not write, except through your lawyer. You know, Matt Gaetz, listen, this letter cannot come in as evidence against Matt Gaetz, at least until and unless, in certain circumstances, if Joel Greenberg actually testifies against him, but it can be used against Joel Greenberg. And there's no reason for it. You know, even if he was trying to get himself a pardon, you don't have to phrase it in that way. You could say, I want to be pardoned for everything alleged in my indictment and all, other investigations stemming from that. There's no reason to kind of write out this confession. And by the way, the notion that he was trying to buy a pardon is yet another potential offense that I don't know whether or not federal authorities that he's now allegedly cooperating with knew about. So this is just an own goal in so many ways. And it could come back to bite Matt Gaetz if, in fact, Joel Greenberg does end up taking the stand against him.
To your point, in case folks at home weren't aware, he wrote this letter trying to get a pardon from the president. I just wonder, the detail he put in there, and by mentioning Gaetz, was that part of the sales pitch, saying, hey, Mr. President, your pal here is involved. You better come to my aid. I mean, is that how you read that?
It's a very interesting part of the reporting, because the reporting also said that Gaetz declined to support the pardon, and that, apparently Greenberg got fairly close to getting it, and then Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, kind of took him off the list. So you kind of wonder whether, in fact, Gaetz, by not taking part in the pardon, ended up, hurting himself in the end.